jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Welcome all to the show. So we're just doing a lovely laid back dissect of the 6th season show that was Community. Welcoming back the movie review crews. Shane, how are you, sir?
Fine, how are you? Doing wonderful.
Always perfect. Got newcomers and diehard Community fans. Thomy.
Hey, Tommy here.
Tommy, how are you, sir? And Chanan.
Hey.
Alrighty. So I'll just circle around. We'll just kind of do a brief dissect on how any of us got into this show at the time and why we're still rewatching the hell out of it. Shane, what was your introduction to this? Did you do it on streaming or were you watching it live before you gave up cable and all that?
No, honestly, this was one I never saw during its initial run. This is one that I found only a few years back, running on Netflix, and watched a couple episodes because I had heard, it's got such a strong cult following, and I had heard so many good things about it, and the names attached to it obviously was intriguing. So then a watch, and it's addicting, man. I'm telling you, you can't just sit down and watch one of these episodes. It hooked me, and my wife and I binged it, and I still watch it. Like you said, you can pick up and watch an episode here and there. So yeah, it's addicting. It's a fun show.
Oh, totally. And so you were already past the whole demotivational posters that were using just random snapshots of the show. You were already like in the thick of it. It's like, do I want to watch it on Hulu or Prime?
Right. Yeah, I like I said, I never caught it on during its initial run. It wasn't something that ever. Obviously it's my type of show, but it just, I never watched it for one reason or another and caught it on streaming, which is almost better for me. At least I get to just binge through it instead of having to wait and see it episode by episode. So that was good on my end.
Yeah, you can definitely tell there was some outlining here because it's like a lot of these shows is like, especially some of the other similar comedic ones like Stargate and Psych, I noticed is like you just go into one after the other and you're like, yeah, they totally brainstormed this whole season. Now they're going to open up each one. Okay, so Chanan, when did you decide that you were going to commit time to this show?
So I had seen a lot of commercials, and it looked stupid because I don't like reality TV. So I knew Joel McHale as the guy from The Soup.
Exactly.
So I was like, that I don't want to see that guy. And in 2009, there was sort of this stigma around movie stars slumming it in TV. So like seeing Chevy Chase on a sitcom, I was like, oh, that's really sad for Chevy Chase, star, and now he's on this like dumb show with the guy from The Soup. So I had no intention of watching this show, and then I was watching The Office, and the premiere date was the only time that Community aired after The Office for the sole purpose of having the lead-in audience. So The Office was over, and I was like too lazy and depressed to get off my couch. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna let this dumb show play, and we'll see how stupid it is. And then the pilot was on, and I couldn't stop laughing. And it was over, and I turned to my roommate, and I was like, I think I love this show. So I've been a fan since day one.
Oh, perfect. Mr. Green, when did you decide that you were going to take the plunge into this show?
I actually got introduced to it by a friend and his wife. They had just picked up season 2, and they had invited me over because they were super excited to show me the paintball episodes of season 2. And they put on the first episode, and I'm looking at the show going, I don't know any of these characters. I don't even know what's going on. This is a school. They're playing paintball. They kind of looked at me, and they were like, you've never seen this show? And they kind of picked, they started with the first paintball from season 1, and they kind of picked them through shows from season 1 and 2, and it started to make more sense. And then finally I sat down with season 1. They just let me borrow. I was like, I just need to watch this from the beginning and figure out who these characters are.
You're right.
That down. So I got to it fairly soon. Season 2 had just come out on DVD at the time, so fairly recent into it.
Stellar action figure collection, by the way, that you got there in the back.
Oh, thank you.
Have Ovid and Troy been invading your room?
Oh yeah, I pretty much. I mean, this whole we're in my it's my nerd den, so it's my toy loft of all movie memorabilia and toys. So that's just the Transformers wall there.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, my sister was watching this. We both liked Joe McHale in the Soup because it was kind of the Daily Show, but for entertainment. It had always just kind of, we'd always seen parts of it. And it was like, okay, but this is light amusement. No one gets hurt. Just amusing satire for those who like it. And then, yeah, it's like, next thing I know, this show has been going on multiple years. And, people kind of forget. Mid-2000s, they started just showing, when you got to a movie early, you didn't just see, ads for other coming attractions. You also got to see endless PlayStation ads, making of specials, and here's what's going to air on TNT and USA this summer. But yeah, so I saw a bunch of community ads while I was in the theater waiting for the trailers to start. But I would see parts of it here and there, and I was just so concerned with just like getting through first year of college that I pretty much only committed time to just some of the action blockbusters and shows. But yeah, it was really just hysterical. I could just see part of an episode and I'd be like, someone really did some pretty cool brainstorming here. Just really just bringing just all these quirky guys and just how they're all is like, who's going to slum it this semester? Who's going to make friends? Who's dating so-and-so? But kind of make it even be more than just that. Like you have all these pop culture references and other recurring gags. So I kind of got a Mystery Science Theater angle from it. But yeah, I kind of saw that some other people and guest stars had also worked on Office and Scrubs and Always Sunny, some similar shows. And so it's like, yeah, my next thing I know, my brother had actually in recent years when he visited in town, but before the COVID scare, had mentioned, yeah, I just went through all of that. Did you ever see it all the way? I was like, no, I haven't. I've seen it, but I haven't seen it all the way. I should fix that. So I'm here to the end, and it's isn't it kind of wild though how most people kind of forgot there was a season 6 because it was on Yahoo streaming, and then Yahoo took down its streaming site, so Hulu acquired it and licensed it to all the other streaming platforms. So it is kind of wild how everyone has like kind of a different. Sorry, go.
Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that's everything that I had heard since I was so late to the party. I guess everything I had heard from friends that even enjoyed the show is that they would always tell me the first 3 seasons are wonderful. The first 3 seasons are wonderful, and then after that it kind of trails off. And I don't necessarily mirror that, but I can see that it was affected. I mean, it's pretty well known that the controversy that was going on behind the scenes, all of those things, and I think it affected it. But yeah, I didn't know there was a 6th season. I started getting into it, and I was kind of reading into the background of the show and how it was released and the drama behind the scenes and how the 6th season went to, like you said, and it wasn't as easily available for everybody. So yeah, it's just an interesting I guess, an interesting end to a show that it, knowing it about it now, it's so popular, which I guess at the time it wasn't as huge, and it's kind of gained this cult following. So it's interesting to me anyways, that this is a huge cult following, but at the time, you know, it's on a streaming service that nobody has and nobody can see at the time.
Oh, totally. And it kind of helped that, yeah, NBC would just look at the numbers, because this was when they were realizing, hey, whoever's doing the math here, you know, you got to count iTunes subscriptions and, you know, Amazon downloads as well, you know? And so it was kind of interesting how, yeah, they were kind of already doing that with Chuck and a bunch of those other comedy shows that were on there, like Superstore, and they're like, okay, well, it will pick up. We have faith in this. And I mean, you guys on Movie Review Crew have talked about before how, you know, Office and Parks and Rec didn't land right away, and Arrested Development,
Right.
you know, was always just getting moved and shuffled around. And it's like, you guys are increasing the problem as opposed to alleviating it. But yeah, it is kind of wild how is like they were cool with whatever ratings they were getting until and it seemed like yeah, after that, this is yet another show where some people like certain amount of seasons or just like to play the, you know, game. And I'm like most of you here, where I just say, hey, judge it for yourself. You know, you're gonna watch it anyway. So it's like you decide where the show went right or went wrong. And so, doing a little history on Dan Harmon. So he had co-created the Sarah Silverman program. He had written a wacky Fox comedy pilot that didn't get picked up that starred Jack Black, called Heat, Vision, and Jack. So he was just going around doing a bunch of other comedy shows. He co-wrote with community co-writer Rob Schraub the CGI animated film Monster House, and later created Rick and Morty on Adult Swim. So, but yeah, this was his kind of first real big just foot in the door, because he was, you know, the showrunner. He was the creator, and going off his actual experiences, and then just kind of like Psych, he just built on whatever comedic talent he had on board and just went from there.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that hurt the show is when you got to the later seasons, they weren't even sure if they were coming back. That they started, if I remember right, it ended up being more than a year in between 4 and 5 and 5 and 6 by the time they switched to Yahoo. That by the time you're even trying to get people into a show, you're going, hey, get into the show. It might come back and it might finish. It might be there. And then, let alone, like you said, it wasn't on any streaming services on the time. So you're trying to get people into a show that you can't find anywhere. It's on and off. You don't even know. And most of the time when people hear a show that's being canceled or not coming back, at that point, they think it's bad and they're not giving it a shot.
Yeah, it seems like they've figured out streaming within the last decade. But yeah, before that, it was just constantly just with, you know, you'd watch a show and then halfway through it get taken down without warning. It's just like they weren't very good at notifying and dialing everyone in to, hey, here's what we got, here's how you can watch it, and here's when it'll be available until, you know, like Hulu's just gotten better at increasing, you know, its movie contracts and, you know, making sure that all the shows that are owned by its constituents are, you know, going to last there a while. But, you know, everyone learns. And I think Harmon was learning that, you know, it's like, okay, so I'm being a little outspoken and Chevy Chase is being outspoken, and, you know, Sony is the production company for this show, and NBC also wants it to be a certain way. So I'm sure he kind of learned from there, is like, here's my voice, here's how I'll do it, and here's what I got to compromise and do. I really am surprised, though, how Crackle, you know, which is a Sony company, never put it on the streaming platform. I have never found it on there. So, yeah, totally like what you said, is like those 3 to 5 years in between, they could have done something more than just put it on Hulu the next day. They could have probably put it on all the other streaming platforms and just, you know, see what clicked. But so long story short, yeah, season 1 just kind of, we'll kind of sum up some of the seasons. Season 1 just kind of does a quick intro to what we expect from everybody, and I guess I can do just a brief intro of all the characters. So we got hack lawyer Jeff, played by Joel McHale. We got outspoken idealist Britta, played by Jillian Jacobs. We got Chevy Chase as Pierce, a millionaire. We got Ovid, who's a failed filmmaker. We got Troy, who's a total outspoken geek and secret dancer.
And the thing I loved is that these characters, they well, honestly, the characters and the shows, even the structure of the episodes, they're built around, I guess, cliches. I mean, the characters are pretty cliche, stereotypical types of characters, but then they're built around those, and they kind of subvert those expectations that come from those cliches or those stereotypes. Same thing with the structures of each specific episode. If it's paying homage to a certain type of TV series or filming technique, even, or movie, or whatever the case is, and it just kind of twists those stereotypes and subverts your expectations and makes it a lot more than it initially appears to be on the surface, at least in my opinion. I mean, you take Troy is starts off as the jock, and then you get, the more you get to know him, he kind of blossoms as his character. Excuse me, Joel McHale plays this cocky, arrogant lawyer, and yeah, he kind of has that throughout the season, or throughout the show. But you see his transformation. He also is, we get little glimpses of that he always wasn't this person. With for instance, his video that he was trying to get onto the real world, which I thought was hilarious. But I love
forgot about that.
they build these characters around well-known stereotypes, and then they use those to kind of play around with our expectations and the characters themselves. And I just absolutely love what they do with all of these characters.
A friend of mine once said that it's sort of a sitcom about being a sitcom. Yes. In that, like totally. You said, it's structured around like our innate expectations of what happens in this type of show or this genre, based on us, the audience having watched 1,000 other sitcoms over the years that all, yes, basically conform to a certain structure. And so what the show does in a really amazing way is to take those expectations and build off that innate experience, and then make something entirely new, or comment on the genre or whatever genre that they're imitating at that particular time.
Oh, totally. And
exactly,
you can tell, like, even when they didn't dedicate like episodes that were spoofing other shows, like, they were definitely kind of providing that kind of insider voice. Is like, psst, we shouldn't be talking about this, but we're talking about it.
See, that's pretty much what got me the show, is that I was always loving movies and binge watching before binge watching was a thing, and then here comes this show that constantly is making fun of what I was growing up. They're just like he does with Rick and Morty. He picks a movie that you've seen 100 times since you were a kid, then puts it as a 30-minute episode with the new characters he's invented, and you love rewatching it just the same as you watched with the original characters.
He really is a pretty good movie connoisseur, because, like you say, yeah, he will basically be making fun of the best parts. So for those who don't know, he makes fun of virtually everything from Doctor Who and Law and Order to Die Hard and Back to the Future. So it is kind of wild how
even the Beetlejuice nod that he throws in there, just that subtle little thing, like those, he's literal movie references throughout that. And just as a person that loves Easter eggs and movies and stuff, just watching Community, having like 3 or 4 of those in an episode, that always made it worth seeing a new episode every time they came out.
Well, yeah. and you've said make fun of, and I agree to a point. It does. It pokes fun at the cliches, but it's it's a respectful poking. It's similar to me in a way to like Hot Fuzz, where Hot Fuzz is a love letter to action movies, while also poking fun at the absurdity and the cliches and stereotypes. And this is very much in that vein where you can tell Harmon respects and adores all of these shows, but at the same time his comedic brain, tears them apart because he's shining light on all the aspects of these shows that, like you've pointed out, we've seen 1,000 times before. We know what's going to happen. He knows what's going to happen every time he watches a show like that. Even not even specific shows, but genres or styles of filmmaking. He'll do an episode that's just about the documentary style or the bottle episode, and where this is a bottle episode and they have to explain what that means in the scope of TV shows. And it is poking fun and he's tearing them apart, but it comes from a place of, at least I think it comes from a place of respect and adoration for TV in general.
Oh, totally. And basically, I mean, I saw that Dan Harmon did a lot of live comedy theater. I think that was totally basically his training for this. Cause I mean, like you're saying, most shows would often again, dedicate the whole episode to, we're just going to make fun or lampoon. But it's like, that's just the backdrop. That's where it's just like, we're just acknowledging our love of this item of pop culture, but we're also using it as part of where it's still kind of furthering these characters and their own weirdness and wackiness. And I mean, people talk about the Dinner with Andre / Pulp Fiction mashup, which is basically, it's like they got 3 different arcs going, and it's also just showing I think that was like the middle of the season. So it was just kind of just closing out where their story arcs were going at the same time, while also just having what was otherwise just a wacky, dress up party.
That reminds me about something about how it was so hard to get people into this show, was that part of it was poor marketing by NBC. Because like, if you were watching NBC commercials when that episode came out, it was Community does Pulp Fiction. It's the Pulp Fiction episode. And then you watch it and you're like, this is My Dinner with Andre. Where's Pulp Fiction? I don't understand what's happening right now.
Right. Other than
unless
surely
you were someone who watched that, you turned it off. And Dan Harmon said in a podcast I listened to recently that there's that scene where Jack Black imagines Britta and Annie wrestling in like whipped cream, and he said like the network didn't understand that like that scene was tongue in cheek, that was like making fun of like college tropes. And so when they made the commercials, they highlighted that scene as if to say like, this is a wacky college show where hot girls wrestle, when that's not what the show was. So if you were attracted based on that commercial and you tuned in, you got this completely different show that's not what you were expecting. Sorry to backtrack, but that just
I think that's kind of on point. I think it definitely focuses in more on just kind of the advertising. Like Joel McHale got interviewed about, I want to say, as of this recording, about 3 months ago on Conan's podcast, and Conan was admitting, is like, I'm done pretending I've seen everyone's movies and shows, so just for you, I made sure to go for the whole show. and Joel was just guffawing, is like, hey, at least you saw it. Better later than never. But yeah, I think it's just stronger than it ever was. It's just no amount of TiVo or DVRing could account for whether or not you saw it. Like, I think my sister always watched it live. She never recorded it. And
I think it happens with Dan Harmon also picking something so simple as I had quite a few friends that loved Rick and Morty. They got me into Rick and Morty. I didn't know what it was, and I found out Dan Harmon did it, and I was like, that's the guy who did Community. You guys should check it out if you love Rick and Morty. And they were like, well, what's that about? And I was like, well, it's a bunch of kids at community college. And they're like, oh, so like Degrassi. And I was like, no, it's nothing like that. It's like,
oh my gosh.
It's like, how do you explain? It's the Rick and Morty guy doing it's the Breakfast Club. It's, it's a bunch of kids
that's
at school.
exactly it too.
We do have some John Hughes love letters sneaked in there. But didn't they mention Degrassi in one episode, I think, briefly, like this ain't Degrassi?
Yeah, Jeff says my life is Degrassi high.
That's what it was.
So they thought it was just a show about a school at that point, and once they found out like they're making tropes and jokes throughout it, and it's not just a bunch of kids taking school and doing drama, they were like, oh, this show is amazing. And it was like, I just, again, with marketing, I don't know quite how you market that show where it jumps around every genre and
It's
different
hell
things.
on earth. I mean, you kind of even see it with
Precisely right. Yeah.
some of these
I mean-
other
I mean,
shows. Like,
Me as a person, I never caught it when it aired. I told you, and a lot of that reason, going back to your point, it was the marketing. What you said your friends thought, that's exactly what I thought. I would see a commercial here and there, and it, like, okay, about, Chevy Chase is interesting, the cast is interesting. At that point, I had no idea who Dan Harmon was, so that wasn't a draw to me. But I saw this commercial and I thought it's a sitcom around people at a community college, and that was all my knowledge, and that was not enough to draw me into it. Now then, Rick and Morty came out. I was a huge fan of that. Now I know who Dan Harmon was. You see his name connected to Community, and you give it a shot, and you realize it's nothing like what it initially was portrayed to be.
oh, totally. And I think, we even try not to judge a movie on a trailer, but it's like now that so many trailers are like out of studio, I would bet you money that's probably what that was too. They were giving it to a trailer company who was just going to just random highlights, just fast forwarding until they saw something interesting. It's like, but that's, again, like you say, it's kind of like when you go based on just something rude or crude or sexual, is like, and it's all in a comedy context, is like, it's going to get even weirder or even more awkward. And like you say, is like, don't ever feed the punchline before you've had the setup of a joke. It's not going to work. It'd be like, oh, that's messed up, but I wish I knew what that all meant. It's just, when you confuse and disorient people, that's why they tune out, and that's why you see the numbers that aren't satisfactory to a network.
Even this thing was show, it's about a bunch of people at a community college, but for the most part, up until the last season, most of their jokes are fairly clean, wholesome, family friendly. That it's like, if you're looking for the partying, rocking high school crowd, that's not really the kind of show they're looking for. Now, granted, it's fun to keep them, but they're not looking for that at the time. If you're looking for something and you get something else, even going into it, having it be great, can put you off on it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I always kind of got that it was an older adult teen show, and not that it was having anything depressing or anything going on, but like you say, is like, yeah, this isn't exactly for 13-year-olds. There's going to be too much that just goes over their head, or, this isn't going to have just what that typical crowd kind of expects, which is, restroom humor. And, in a college, let's face it, when you've done college humor before, usually it is kind of just teacher related or other kind of off-color stuff, sports. And it's like, this show was making fun of the college subgenre while also, creating its own world. The principal has his own unusual quirks, and then you got Shirley and Annie, who I forgot to mention earlier, who are like top of the line students who are returning and finishing out. And so, yeah, it's just like, anyone else who's just expecting any kind of cliches is like, you don't know what you see until you actually just, it's kind of like any kind of food. It's like, you got to actually have the meal and have your afterthoughts on, did it taste good? Did it rock? And yeah, so many just blisters in the wood before it got out the door. It's like, yeah, it's like, you might like what you see, but you don't know until you try it.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that I think on the surface of this, and you could even sell it, it's this silly kind of, I don't want to use the word stupid, but it's kind of an offbeat movie, but the writing I think is a lot more than that. It's a lot smarter than that. It's very, very clever. I mean, the comedy that shows up here as almost just a throwaway line and then is brought back to mean something more. I mean, that's comedy. That's basics of comedy. I understand that, but this show does that perfectly. The humor in this, the writing in this is very, very smart for such a kind of a silly show. I mean, it's at points it feels like the show has no direction, so it's just kind of here. It's spoofing this genre, and then we have an episode that kind of is a standalone episode that doesn't really have to do with the season's arc, but then it's all brought right back together to all kind of mean something at some point in that specific season, even a later season, whatever the case may be. So I give Harmon all the credit in the world. This is very, very well written, and it's a lot smarter than I think it even wants people to think it is, because of the the way it presents itself and the silliness of it all. But I think it's a very, very well written show.
And see, sorry, go ahead.
It rewards rewatching because, like you said, there's so many
Yes.
things that come back even seasons later that by that time they come back, you don't even remember them. So, like, every time you watch, I've been watching this show over and over again for years, and every so often someone's like, hey, did you notice this? And it's something I've never seen before. So, like, it's so intricate that you're never done seeing, like, the nuances.
Yeah, those
Right.
who are casually and not really truly dialed in, they're going to miss it regardless. But, it kind of goes back to, everyone complains about the IMDb top 250. And it's like, well, most of those movies on there weren't hits at the time. They just became appreciated years later by, the movie channels re-showing them. And I think, this is going back to Shane's point, is just like, is like they really did kind of pace themselves. Like, they would have just outrageous stuff happen, but not to where you're like, yeah, I can't see that happening in any kind of context or any kind of setting. And it is kind of wild how they'll just play off of various things. It's like the dean will make a new prerequisite or requirement for students that they're not too pleased with. Some of the teachers will be misbehaving, and one other character will reveal that he wants to do this thing with their life after they graduate. So it is kind of wild how they will lead you into all the jokes, and then you just have all these gut busting laughs that are just so well earned and merited. It's like, it's like the setup is all there, and now if you just want to follow these one of these two of the 6 individuals around, you can do that, and you'll definitely like their storyline. And
Right.
rewatching it will definitely reward, because then you'll be like, oh yeah, that's right. So they were made, and it is definitely rewarded by, they would mention celebrities like LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow and Star Trek and Louise Guzman, and then years later they are on
And
there,
then
but
they show
playing
up.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned casual viewers. I think that's one of this show's strongest suits, is that casual viewers can appreciate. I mean, the one-liners and the characters and the comedy and the pacing, but like you've pointed out, there's also a lot of nuances and depth, and so dedicated viewers, repeat viewers. So no matter what level of a fan you are of the show, first time watching, casual watcher, picking up an episode here or there, or obsessed, like we've said, watching episodes time and time again, there's always something for everybody in all these episodes. And even if I think it was Thomy mentioned that they showed you one episode in the middle and you kind of were clueless as to what's going on, but you could still understand the references and get some enjoyment out of that. And so no matter where you are as a viewer, there's always something to enjoy.
Oh, totally. And I'll even ask a more personal question. How many of you have actually encountered just wacky goofballs? I mean, everyone's encountered wacky slackers in a college setting. Did you have any moments where you're just like, I can relate to that, having been a student and all?
Oh yeah. Probably the biggest part was the bottle episode where they grabbed Troy's backpack and there's a pillow in it, and just Jeff's like, "You're my hero." I've had those moments. I just put a pillow in my backpack, and that was my pillow for school.
Oh, totally.
Last week of school, you're not doing nothing. I'm throwing some pillows in there. I'm getting my nap time, man. We're good.
Oh, totally. I was sleeping in my car in between shifts for the next one, and I saw a bunch of influence, especially with just the deans or professors who give just very off-color lectures and just have questionable ethics. And so then there's always just kind of those moments where it does kind of make fun. Like, I mean, okay, so let's talk about the biggest scene stiller that arguably, which is Spanish teacher Chang. It was like, so he got we later find out he got the gig under just false pretenses, and so how he's kind of much like Jeff. He wasn't honest in the beginning. You're right. It's like Jeff wants to be an honest, hardworking individual from this point forth, since he blew his first shot, and Chang has no sense of ever changing, but kind of wants to change. So he does all these professions that he's probably not best suited for, like try to become an actor and try to be
a great actor.
Right, and try and be a security guard. This is so outrageous how it just keeps going back and forth. It's like, okay, of course Chang wants to do this.
Yeah, his character is so amazing because it's just all nonsense. It's nonsense. It's so crazy. I mean, and it's I guess his arc where he goes from a teacher to a student to wanting to be a part of their crew to wanting to destroy everything to his arc where he's homeless for a bit and living with Jeff, and it's just every time his character takes a turn, it's just so insane, but it's so amazing. I love that character.
Oh, totally. And I definitely felt like the actor really did kind of evolve from this point forward. I mean, yeah, sure, he'd done guest spots and, you know, been in the Hangover movies around the same time, but then you see him in, you know, the actor himself wanted to be a doctor before he became an actor, and so then he has a sitcom where he's playing a doctor. So it's like, but I would see how he would kind of do some of these comedy event shows and hosting stuff now, and I'm just like, but that came from the Chang character. Ken Jeong's just got to, you know, this was his first real recurring gig, and he's just like, yeah, but this is what I'm gonna really grow as both an actor and as a comedic talent, and just really, yeah, like you say, is like anything left over, no matter how notorious or absurd, you know, he's gonna get that subplot, and you're gonna wonder when is it gonna explode? When is it gonna even expand and interrupt the rest of the characters' lives, and they're gonna be disrupted by it, and we're gonna guffaw endlessly because it's like, yeah, only in their lifetime are they gonna encounter this.
Part of my love-hate relationship with the show is once we got rid of Pierce and Troy, as much as I missed those characters, that's when we really started dealing a lot more with Dean and Chang, and then we even dealt more with Fat Neil and Becky and Leonard. We really got to deal more with the side background characters that I liked knowing them, so we got really more of the world of Community rather than just the study group.
Yeah, so because like you say, is like season 4 is the one that divides everyone, because at that point they're just like, okay, well, so Harmon's fired, but the rest of the cast doesn't get along with Chevy Chase. So at the same time, it's like, let's just continue and let's just, you know, season 5 they bring Harmon back, and then, you know, Chase doesn't come back, and then season 6 he introduced those new characters, you know, Frankie, who's like one of the assistants, you know, to the dean, and then Elroy, played by the great Keith David.
So let me ask all of you guys, what are your thoughts? Because it seems to be, at least for the most part of people that I've spoken with, people that have enjoyed the show, there's 2 parts. There's 1 through 3 and then 4 and beyond. How did you guys feel? What was there a noticeable shift? Do you prefer one over the other? Do you consider them a whole? Do you like it all for what it is? How do you feel about that?
Well, you're gonna watch it all one way or another anyway. And like you, I do like to have kind of just a natural opinion and observation, as opposed to let's just agree with the elitist viewpoint, let's just agree with this versus that because it's, you know, cool and all that. It's like, no, have an authentic, you know, viewpoint on it and be ready to defend.
Saying that though, that there are noticeable differences, especially like you were saying season 4, where even if it's, you know, noticeable tone shifts, but Pierce leaving and then Troy leaving and you know, it's all a result of the background stuff. So it evolves like any other show, but this is because of behind the scenes drama and people not wanting to be a part of it, not understanding it. So there is a noticeable shift in it.
Yeah, totally. Because you can't blame Donald Glover for wanting at that point to just say, "Hey, I brought everything I can to that character. Now I want to, expand and do something new." And at the same
And it
time,
worked out for him.
yeah, and I mean, it is kind of like any other ensemble show. Is like there's always someone who says, "Oh, but that character, that's the one who really makes me watch it." So I can totally see why so many just tuned out. They're like, "Oh, well, if Troy's leaving or Pierce is leaving, then I want out too." So it's kind of a shame that it got to that point where it just had to be that divided.
So I lived through the transformation as I was watching it when it was happening, and I was, waiting for the news of what was going to be between season 3 and season 4. So when I first watched season 4, knowing that there had been this huge behind the scenes change and why it had happened, I hated it. Like sometimes in my Facebook memories, it reminds me of something I said at the time about how much I was like done with Community and it'll never be the same and I'm never watching this show again. Hated it.
Perfect.
Season 5 and season 6, certainly different. How could it not be different after all the stuff that's going on and all the characters changed? But I never thought that they were as good as seasons 1 through 3, but I still thought they were delightful. And I don't think anything will ever be like seasons 1 through 3 of that show. I mean, there's not a bad episode in my opinion of those seasons.
I 100% agree.
Season 4 is the only one that has episodes that I actively dislike, but the more times I watch it, the more I appreciate it for what it is, because I no longer have any kind of expectation. In my mind, I'm expecting it to be as terrible as I thought it was the first time. So watching it again, I'm like, oh no, that line's funny. That episode's good. Like, yeah, this isn't as good as seasons 1 through 3, but this is better than whatever other show is on right now or other like, multi-camera sitcom.
Right.
Yeah, so, I saw that the convention episode in season 4 gets a lot of hate, and for me, that was like one of the few episodes I laughed at. I didn't mind the beginning and end of season 4, but there was so much stuff like in between that I struggled to just finish an episode, and it wasn't in that it was poorly filmed or anything. It was just kind of like these felt like deleted scenes that just weren't as polished in the joke department. But I get that it's hard when your MVP, who's, he and one of the stars aren't getting along and, is like people got to rebuild from scratch, and nitpickers will always never be satisfied. We can say that with, for any fandom. So, I mean, I think at that point, everyone was just kind of just flustered, but they were just glad that it was still on and it was still getting love and attention. And I'm just glad that they got to finish out the
still
show.
Good. Not the same, but still good. Still has its unique identity.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think I knew anything with the Harmon stuff going on. I remember just watching 3, taking a while. 4 came out and I watched it, and I never felt like a huge difference. I've seen shows that have done 180, especially when you watch like a lot of the BBC stuff. So I was a little okay with it, but it was season 6 that really felt the difference for me. And I think that's just because Dan Harmon got a lot more freedom once he went over to what was it, Yahoo that had it,
right?
Because he got to drop the F-bomb a little bit more. He got.
I was really shocked at that, especially in the finale when
we got that awesome incest episode, and it's stuff like that I don't think we would have ever gotten on other TV shows, which is what throws season 6 out of whack so far for me, because it's all stuff you wouldn't normally see them do on TV, which is all what Community was making fun of usually.
Oh, totally. And so I guess how would we rank Frankie and Elroy? Should they have been part of the cast to begin with, or were they just easing up on it because it's like, well, 2 cast members are left, so we got to add 2 different ones?
I love them. I wish there was more Frankie and Elroy. I mean, Keith David is just amazing in everything, and they have some hilarious scenes. I mean, everyone talks about the Frankie speech to the dean, how you're so stupid. I don't have to be stupid. I mean, just Elroy's face when Frankie tells him he doesn't have a TV, or when he's going on about megabytes and terabytes. Like, they are fantastic characters that if there had been 3 other seasons with them, I would not complain. There are no, obviously Troy and Pierce and Shirley all have special places in my heart, but if we can't have them, I think Frankie and Elroy were fantastic.
Yeah, after a while, it did seem like Abed just kind of kept embracing Troy. So for some reason, I kind of just, on this rewatch, it did kind of was interesting. You kind of forget that they're missing Troy after a while because they just mention him every episode. But yeah, Pierce is just kind of was one of those where it's just like, okay, well, Elroy's going to be the new grumpy man. And Shirley, I mean, it helped that she kind of at least, appeared in some of the initial episodes of the final season. But then after a while, I was like, oh yeah, by the way, Shirley's not joining them. Oh, that's right. Because
see, I think I liked Elroy for the same reason, is that he kind of he refixed a dynamic. He put in another like grumpy old guy. But Frankie, while I don't have a problem with her, and they made fun of it in the show, but she was basically another Annie, in my opinion. She didn't stand out as much as a character. And that could have just been with only, one season that was a half a season also of development, or how much of it is just that they had to throw in a 7th character.
I'll give you that, because at first you didn't know, okay, is she going to replace the dean? And then like midway through is like, most of us kind of know Paquette Brewster because she's done all these voiceover roles and from Criminal Minds.
She just felt out of place as the only character that didn't have a dynamic that she fit that wasn't already filled by somebody else.
Oh, totally. And it is kind of wild because, I mean, she's had kind of a big comedic background. Like, she did this one sitcom with Andy Richter and some other side project with Seth MacFarlane. And it's like, but yeah, after a while, she's kind of just the other person who Jeff shits on, who's not Britta, or who gets into a fist fight with. And they did kind of do an awkward kind of introduction of her because she'd already guest starred as the IT gal.
Yep.
And at first I thought it was the same character, but then, my sister said, no, rewind. It's like, oh, she acknowledged, oh yeah, people get me mixed up with the IT person. So it's like, oh, she's playing 2 different people and they're breaking the 4th wall, doing the inside joke. Ha. But yeah, I think the character took a while to grow. Like, I didn't really feel like she really had a moment to shine until they did like outrageous isolated episodes like the RV and the
where she got to flip out and no longer be the straight character and
be
a little more of a character. That's my only problem with Frankie, and it's not necessarily her, because the actor, she has some great quotes, some great one-liners in that last season, but I just feel like the character's a bit underdeveloped, or was it just a bit thrown in?
Right, kind of the straight person to all the other nitwits, because it's like, especially when they do their final paintball episode, Jeff is on her good side and you're like, oh, that's not gonna last. Jeff is the ultimate and Elroy in this case are the ultimate paintball champions. So yeah, he's gonna have to break his rule of no more paintball and engage in this.
I have a take about what season 6 is doing sort of thematically and how Frankie fits into that. The feeling I've always gotten is that season 6 is Harmon actively telling the fans that they have to be ready to let go of this show. Like you said, no one knew where to find Yahoo Screen, so the only people watching it were the super fans. And throughout that whole season, there's references to the world outside Greendale. Like, most of the end tags are about other characters. And there's also an ongoing trope of people watching other people, as if to say, like, to speak to the audience watching them. So Frankie, it was the normal outside world coming into this crazy universe, being like, no, it's time to stop being crazy. It's time to grow up and get to the real world. Which was the show saying, like, you have to understand that this show is coming to an end and you have to go back to the regular world and continue living your lives even though it's over.
Oh, totally. And it did seem like some of the guest stars were only funnier if you were familiar with those actors on their other shows. Like, they had Anthony Michael Hall, he's the king of appearing in John Hughes movies. So
that was one thing about the show, for not having anybody know who it was. They had some huge guest stars pop up just about every other episode, especially in the first 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, the late Michael K. Williams was playing Professor Kane, and this is like, well, okay. And he makes a few jokes that are clear references to his role in The Wire. And then you got
Betty
Giancarlo
White, Black,
Betty White was a great one, and then
Owen Wilson.
right, and Jack Black, Drew Carey, and
Drew Carey was a great one. That was one I loved having pop up.
oh, totally. And some characters after a while, I will admit, I kind of wanted to see him come back, but I'll get to him in a bit. Giancarlo Esposito was probably the biggest surprise. It's like you're seeing this scary actor, doing funny and scary at the same time as Pierce's, bastardized brother and or half brother, my bad. And it's like he's in there, and then you had one of the other potheads from Breaking Bad, like playing two different roles, like serving pizza. And then when you finally get to Jonathan Banks, so do you feel like he should have been in there more, or was he kind of just not cutting the mustard in the comedy department as Professor Buzz, or was he just the Pierce replacement initially before they went with Elroy?
He was one I grew into liking, but he was another one that they threw in that I was like, you got a big actor from Breaking Bad who at the time I didn't know him for anything comedy thrown into a comedy situation. It was like, okay, let's see where you're going to go with this kind of thing. Because for the most part, everybody else had some bit of comedic background.
Yeah. It really is surprising how it kind of went that way. So how about I mention some other recurring characters, and you guys can comment on how they factor in the show. Should we have seen more of them versus, less of them? Were they working, not working? So how about I go with Leonard, the other side prankster who's not, who's just a recurring guest.
I loved Leonard. Every time that guy showed up, he cracked me. I mean, he didn't have to do much in any single episode to just be hilarious. One that's to me as a prime example of that is I think it was season 2, the election episode, and he ran for yes, class president, and his basically his stance was just making a fart noise with his mouth out, and that was basically the only lines he had in that episode. But I loved it. I thought the guy was hilarious. He'd show up here, and I think he was used the perfect amount, because too much of him, I don't know that would work. I don't think he needed to be a fully created character. I think he just had to be Leonard who'd show up, do some silly thing, and
right,
and then he's gone.
You can't have a Leonard plot.
Anything
right,
else?
exactly. Yes.
Story.
Leonard just exists to be funny for a second, and then he's gone. Yeah,
I could have 5 minutes of Leonard walking into the study room, and then we just go like around the table, one person at a time, each of them doing the "shut up, Leonard," and then making fun of him about something.
Right.
Go around the table and then have him walk out the other side, not even get another line in or anything.
Right.
Oh, totally.
I love Leonard. I don't think we needed more of him. I don't think that would have served any purpose.
Yeah, it would have been too much. But it is kind of funny, though. I was like, after a while, it did kind of seem like anything just outrageous that Britta didn't say, or gross that Ovid or Pierce didn't say, he pretty much said. He's that 6 extra voice. He's like, gotta get my 2 cents.
The scene when he comes in and says, "Jeff, thanks for eating all the macaroni," and Jeff says, "I don't know what you're talking about." That scene cracks me up. I laugh out loud every time, and I know exactly how it's going to play out. I can recite the whole thing word for word, and it's still hysterical.
Yeah, it's the delivery. That's a lot of the case with this show. A lot of episodes that I laugh out loud to this show more than a lot of other shows, because, like you said, despite the fact that it's coming, somehow it's still just the delivery, it catches you off guard still, even though it's coming. It just hits you, and I agree. It makes me laugh out loud.
Here it is. Yep. So I guess we'll go into co-writer Dinos Mopoulos, who played Starburns. How did that character figure in?
I think I don't know. I liked his character. I don't know that he added a whole ton. Again, it was just, I liked all the side characters in this show, and I probably feel the same way about all of them. Like I said about Leonard, I think for the most part they were used exactly the right amount. We were focused on the right characters, and I liked that the side characters would come in for a line here and there, play a bigger part in an episode here or there, but they remain their side characters for a reason. Because as much as I love them, do I really need to or want to know more about them? I don't know.
Oh, I'm with you. There's plenty of these guys. I don't think they would be able to carry it by themselves, but they had enough screen time. And even looking at a cast list, I was even surprised. I was like, no way. They're only in 3 episodes. It felt like 6.
Right.
Their presence is that felt like, especially when you got the dean of the other college campus, Spreck, who's played by Jordan Black. I was just like, I could have sworn, because like, no, that's just how powerful he is. He's playfully just trying to make the Greendale College fail by having his college do some other conflict of interest event. It's just like, my goodness. All these guys are man-childs.
There is one side character that I always wanted to see more of, and that's Pavel. I love Pavel. I think he's hilarious, and he's like he appears a lot and has no speaking lines in a number of scenes. Like anytime Abed is filming, at some point, maybe in the background, you'll see Pavel is helping him. But when Pavel gets lines, they're great, and just there's not enough. I need more Pavel in my life.
I think I remember him, and yeah, it's like basically anything that essentially anything that Abba was thinking of, he was basically just encouraging him. He was like, yeah, you should do that. Like,
yeah, I that I can agree with. Honestly, maybe it has to do with the fact that he's, like, as you pointed out, typically connected to Abed, and I could just watch a show about Abed. I think that character is one of the most amazing TV characters ever. Totally. I would be on board with that. Just a show with those two. I'm there, man.
Totally.
That would crack me up.
Oh yeah. I was even a little more confused how they kind of had Jeff in a love triangle at first. At first, they kind of had Professor Slater, played by Lauren Stommel of Burn Notice fame, and Britta, and then they kind of did away with that, and then they went to Annie and Britta, and then they just wrote out the Annie part and just said, "Oh, he's back with Britta." I was like, "What?" So
they never wrote out the Annie part. The Annie relationship continues throughout the entire series, culminating in the final thing. The relationship between Jeff and Annie is the main romantic dynamic of the show.
Oh, really? I always kind of thought it was Britta, because like he stops flirting with her after a while.
He stops flirting with Annie.
Yeah, but they do have a spot that it's the debate episode that they kind of talk that they can't flirt anymore, and then they kind of stop until they get in a little bit of the later seasons, and he goes through his midlife crisis of saying goodbye to all of his friends at the school, that he kind of goes back with Annie.
Oh, totally.
So and on that, while we have a little bit more time, the big, I guess, push now is the fans, the community, I guess, of the show. They're pushing for a movie. Would you be interested? Do you think that's necessary?
Oh, yes.
Do you think they should
absolutely.
Just 6 seasons and a movie?
I could only do the movie if they could get everybody to come back that's alive, and like if they couldn't get Chevy Chase, it would suck. But like if you could even have him be like the hologram in the background, I'd be fine.
Well,
but
that's just it too. This is like just hire 2 directors. The actors can all be CGI. They don't have to be on the same set, and just make everyone happy. And like you say, I mean, I did see Yvette Nicole Brown say that she's always talking about it with them every day in a group text. And so it is a thing. And Dan continually, says on his podcast and other interviews, he's like, yeah, no, he wants to make it happen, but he doesn't want it to be like X-Files or Star Trek where he's having to both fight. Like he has to be able to make it be a movie that stands at his own as opposed to just a fan service that no one else remembers. He doesn't want to be
right.
Suffice it to say, he doesn't want to be too clever for his own good. And while you could argue that some of those examples he named kind of appealed to a lot of different people, I got what he was going for. He's like, I want it to kind of just really just be a well thought out feature length comedy as opposed to, you know, this is a 2-hour episode.
Might be the best time to do it now that, I mean, COVID has kind of pushed more artists, directors, writers, what have you, to these streaming services where they have more freedom. If he made a movie and it were to be on a streaming service, he would have all the freedom in the world. He wouldn't have to fight and have that struggle or drama with production companies, things like that. I think it'd be, like I said, if he's got his ideas and if he's given the full freedom to fledge out and finish it how he wants to finish it, I'd be 1,000% on board.
If there could be a commercial and it looked remotely like the show, I would be down. I mean, it might suck, but I would see it before I even saw the review. So at that point, I'd be in. So if the commercial looked anything like the show, I'd be down.
I would watch that movie as the second it comes out. I'd watch it on opening night. If it's streaming, I will watch it the second that it's available.
100%.
Your watch history
I agree.
Your watch history will be seen 500 times this year. Do you want to watch it again? Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, why are you asking?
Why is the repeat button broken?
I don't know.
Yeah, this show's just so perfect for that. The repeat watching. I mean, people. To me, this is up there. I mean, you talk about the shows that are continuously on repeat for people. The Office, Friends. I mean, people constantly talk about how those are just they finish and then they start from the beginning. This, I think, is in that same boat where you can do that, and you, as you've pointed out before, you constantly get something new. You get some new enjoyment. You notice a new subtle detail that you laugh at a part that maybe you missed because you were laughing before and didn't hear it. Whatever the case, it's perfect for reviewing.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure all the actors have basically had time to heal at this point. It's like, hey, I'm willing to come back to that character. I'm willing to do this or that. And, you know,
and I would take whoever is on board and wants to do it and their heart is in it, do it with them. You know, I don't know that you could get everybody.
As far as I know, only 2 actors really didn't care for being their characters on the show, and that was Chevy Chase and Starburns. The Starburns.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
If I could be wrong, but if I remember right, I read an interview that he didn't really care to be Starburns, which is why he was like, okay, kill me off. And Dan Harmon was like, well, I'm bringing you back.
Yeah. Right, because he was a writer on the show as well as other shows like Mr. Show.
They got a pretty good thing at Comic-Con that he goes up to ask the question as one of the producers, and he just kind of rips Dan Harmon the joke, being like, why does your movie suck so bad?
Oh, my God.
But if you can find it, he's a pretty funny guy that...
I'm sure the conventions are great.
But if I remember right, he didn't like being in front of the camera, but everybody loved Starburns, that they kept throwing him in, and he was like, look, I'm done with the character. I don't want to be in front of the screen anymore. So it's not necessarily he hated doing it, he just didn't want to be on camera. But other than that, everybody else I remember is all said is, if there's a movie, we're coming.
I think you guys perfectly summed it up. It's going to magnetize since it's got a whole new audience that's evolved at this point. So thank you ever so much for being on the show. Yeah. And anyone who wants to sneak in some promos for what they're doing in the world of just entertainment or anything else that projects they got, let me know. We got 2 minutes left on the clock.
I'm good. This is your show. I'll promote this one.
Okay, awesome. And I got my shit together. I'm always having free episodes of weeks. So yeah, this will be 3 months, not, oh, I thought it's in the can. Oh shit, it's not out yet. Gotta edit. Okay. Thank you ever so much for being on here. I think this was a very just straightforward, but also just, we're analyzing the complex of this uncanny comedy show and just what makes it tick for us all. So it was
fun. It was nice to meet you two, and nice to be on with you again, Cam.
Absolutely. And as you know, you guys are welcome back anytime. We'll definitely try and get some more just cult franchises episodes going.
Oh yeah, I'll talk about Community or any other movies to anybody who
right. If you want to do another one about Community.
Wait, we could definitely do one where we analyze the actors of Community's best roles. For sure.
I'm just gonna say they're all the characters from Community, so I don't know that.
Oh, so there you go. Method acting. Thank you all so much.
Bye, guys.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We might talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one. Music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers, the Google Play, Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say all that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be
could
a
you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zamenhof, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zamenhof, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zamenhof.
Hi everybody, it's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver Podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old Podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VD Clinic Pod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VD Clinic Pod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.